The Marriage Counseling Journey: How Two People Learn to Talk Again. I still remember the first time Priya and Rajesh walked into my counseling room. They sat on opposite ends of the sofa, as far apart as two people could possibly sit, while technically sharing the same piece of furniture. Their body language told me everything before they spoke a single word. Arms crossed, eyes looking anywhere except at each other. The air between them felt thick and heavy, like you could cut it with a knife. This is how many couples arrive for their first marriage counseling session: exhausted, hurt, sometimes angry, often hopeless. They've been fighting the same fights for months or years. They've tried everything they can think of, and now they're sitting in front of a stranger, wondering if anything can possibly help. What happens next in that small, quiet room can change everything. Not because I have magic words or secret techniques, but because counseling creates something that's been missing from their relationship: a safe space where two people can finally, truly listen to each other. Why couples stop hearing each other. When Priya finally started talking that first day, her words came out in a rush. "He never listens to me. I tell him things and he just nods and keeps looking at his phone. I could tell him the house is on fire and he wouldn't even look up." Rajesh's response was immediate. "That's not fair. You're always complaining about something. Nothing I do is ever good enough." And just like that, we were watching their pattern play out right there in the session. She feels unheard, so she speaks louder and more urgently. He feels attacked, so he defends himself or shuts down. She interprets his shutdown as more evidence that he doesn't care. He feels more attacked. Round and round they go. This is what I see over and over again in marriage counseling. Two people who once loved each other deeply, who chose each other out of everyone in the world, now stuck in a pattern where they can't hear what the other person is actually saying. The problem isn't that they don't talk. Most couples talk plenty. The problem is that they've stopped really listening. When your partner is speaking, you're not hearing their words anymore. You're preparing your defense. You're remembering all the times they did that annoying thing. You're planning your counterattack. Or you've just shut down completely because it all feels too hard. In counseling, my first job is to slow this down, way down, because healing can't happen at the speed of an argument. Creating safety in the storm. I asked Priya and Rajesh a simple question: can we try something different today? Instead of trying to solve anything or prove who's right, can we just try to understand each other? They both looked skeptical, but they were there, in my office, which meant some tiny part of them still had hope. So they agreed. What happened next is something I do in nearly every couple session. It's called reflective listening, and it sounds almost too simple to work, but it's incredibly powerful. Here's how it works. One person speaks, not for long, just a sentence or two about how they feel. The other person listens, really listens, without interrupting, without defending, without planning what to say next. Then they repeat back what they heard, in their own words, to make sure they understood correctly. That's it. When I asked Priya to try first, she looked at Rajesh and said, very quietly, "I feel lonely. Even when you're in the same room, I feel alone." Before counseling, Rajesh would have immediately said something like, "How can you be lonely? I'm right here." But in the session, with me gently guiding him, he took a breath and said, "You're saying you feel lonely even when I'm there with you." Priya's eyes filled with tears. Yes, exactly that. Something shifted in that moment. Rajesh didn't have to agree with Priya or admit he was wrong. He just had to show her that he heard what she said. And for Priya, being truly heard after feeling invisible for so long was like cool water in a desert. Understanding the patterns that trap us. Over the next few weeks, we worked on identifying their pattern. Every couple has one. It's like a dance you do over and over, even though it makes you both miserable. In counseling, we call these destructive patterns, and understanding them is the first step to changing them. For Priya and Rajesh, their pattern looked like this. Priya would feel disconnected and would reach out to Rajesh trying to connect, but her attempts often came out as criticism because she was already hurt and frustrated. Rajesh would hear the criticism and feel like a failure, so he would withdraw to protect himself. His withdrawal made Priya feel even more disconnected, so she would pursue harder, often with more criticism. He would withdraw further. The gap between them grew wider and wider. Neither of them was the villain in this story. They were just trying to protect themselves from pain. But their protection strategies were actually creating more pain. When I showed them this pattern drawn out on paper, something amazing happened. They could both see it clearly for the first time. It wasn't Priya is a nag or Rajesh is cold. It was we're stuck in a loop that's hurting both of us. That shift from blame to understanding is where healing begins. Learning new ways to connect. Once Priya and Rajesh could see their pattern, we started building new skills. These aren't complicated techniques, they're simple ways of talking and listening that most of us never learned growing up. One technique that helped them enormously was something called I feel statements. Instead of saying, you never pay attention to me, Priya learned to say, I feel lonely when we're both home, but not really together. Do you see the difference? The first version attacks, the second version shares. When you attack, people defend. When you share your feelings, people can actually hear you. Rajesh learned something important too. He learned that when Priya was upset, she didn't need him to fix everything or defend himself. Most of the time, she just needed him to listen and acknowledge her feelings. This was hard for him at first. Like many people, he thought being a good partner meant solving problems. But sometimes the best thing you can do is simply say, that sounds really hard. I'm here with you. We also worked on what therapists call alignment, which is a fancy word for remembering why you're on the same team. When you're in conflict, it's easy to see your partner as the enemy, but they're not. The enemy is the problem you're facing together, whether that's financial stress, parenting disagreements, or just the daily grind that's pulled you apart. I asked them to remember their wedding day. What drew them to each other originally? What did they love about each other before life got so complicated? Priya remembered that Rajesh made her laugh when they first met. He was silly and playful in a way that helped her relax after stressful days. Rajesh remembered that Priya was the first person who really saw him, who asked him what he thought and actually cared about the answer. Those qualities were still there, buried under years of hurt and miscommunication. Counseling was helping them dig down to that foundation and rebuild from there. The power of being truly seen. Here's something I've learned after years of doing marriage counseling. Most relationship problems aren't really about the things couples fight about. They're not actually about who forgot to buy milk, or who spent too much money, or whose turn it is to do the dishes. They're about deeper needs that aren't being met. The need to feel valued, the need to feel understood, the need to matter to the person you've chosen to build a life with. In one session, after we'd been working together for a few months, Rajesh said something that brought tears to my eyes. He looked at Priya and said, I didn't realize how much I'd hurt you. I thought I was just staying quiet to keep the peace. I didn't know my silence was making you feel alone. Priya reached across that sofa, across the gap that seemed so wide when they first arrived, and took his hand. I didn't realize my words felt like attacks to you. I thought I was just trying to get you to hear me. I didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't good enough. This is what we call mutual understanding. Not agreement necessarily, but understanding. Each person finally seeing how the other person experiences things. When you feel truly seen by your partner, something inside you relaxes. You don't have to fight so hard anymore. You don't have to protect yourself so fiercely. You can let your guard down because you know this person isn't trying to hurt you. They're trying to love you, even if they don't always do it perfectly.
Small changes, big transformations. The work Priya and Rajesh did in counseling wasn't dramatic. We didn't have breakthrough moments every session. Mostly, it was slow, steady practice of new ways of being with each other. They practiced listening without defending. They practiced sharing feelings without blaming. They practiced approaching conflicts as a team instead of as opponents. Some weeks were better than others. Some weeks they came in frustrated, saying they'd fallen back into old patterns. That's normal. Healing isn't a straight line. But over time, things shifted. Small changes added up to big transformations. They started sitting closer together on the sofa. They made eye contact more. They even laughed together sometimes, which hadn't happened in my office for the first few months. One day, about 6 months into our work together, Priya said something that told me they were going to be okay. She said, "We had a fight this week, but it was different. We both caught ourselves doing the old pattern and we stopped." Rajesh said, "We're doing it again, aren't we?" And we both laughed and started over. That's the goal of marriage counseling, not to never fight because all couples fight, but to fight in ways that bring you closer instead of pushing you apart, to see the patterns and choose something different, to remember that you're on the same team. What marriage counseling really offers. People sometimes ask me what marriage counseling actually does. Here's my honest answer. Counseling creates a safe container where two hurt people can remember how to be gentle with each other. It teaches practical skills for communication and conflict resolution. It helps you understand the patterns you're stuck in and how to change them. It gives you tools like reflective listening, emotion-focused conversations, and collaborative problem solving. But more than any technique, counseling offers something simple and profound, a place where both people feel safe enough to be vulnerable, where you can say, "I'm scared," or "I'm hurt," or "I miss you," without fear of attack or dismissal. The counseling room becomes a practice space for the relationship you want to have. With me there as a guide, you try new ways of talking, listening, and connecting. Then you take those new skills home and practice them in daily life. Some couples come to counseling to save a marriage that's on the edge of ending. Others come to make a good relationship even better. Some come with specific problems like infidelity or financial stress that feel too big to handle alone. All of them leave with something valuable, a deeper understanding of themselves, their partner, and what it takes to build a relationship that nourishes both people. Trust, respect, and the courage to be known. At the heart of every successful marriage counseling experience is the therapeutic relationship, the trust that builds between the couple and the counselor. Without that trust, the real work can't happen. This is why finding the right counselor matters. You need someone who feels safe, who doesn't take sides, who respects both of you equally, someone who believes in your relationship even when you're struggling to believe in it yourselves. When that trust exists, beautiful things become possible. People share things they've never said out loud before. They admit fears and longings they've kept hidden. They take risks in expressing themselves because they know they won't be judged or dismissed. This is the courage counseling asks of you, the courage to be truly known, to let your partner see your fears, your needs, your tender places, to stop performing or defending and just be honest about what's happening inside you. It's scary, it makes you vulnerable, but it's also the only path to genuine intimacy and connection. Your relationship deserves this care. If you're reading this and thinking about your own relationship, wondering if marriage counseling might help, I want you to know something. Seeking help isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of commitment. You're not giving up on your relationship by going to counseling. You're fighting for it. You're saying, this matters to me, we matter to me, and I'm willing to do the work to make this better. That work isn't always easy. Some sessions will feel uncomfortable. You'll have to look at your own patterns and behaviors, not just your partner's. You'll need to practice new skills that feel awkward at first. You might cry. You might feel frustrated when change doesn't happen as quickly as you'd like. But if you stick with it, if you show up honestly and do the work, counseling can transform your relationship in ways you can't imagine right now. Priya and Rajesh finished their counseling work about a year after that first session. When they came in for our last meeting, they sat close together in the middle of that sofa. Their hands were intertwined. They still had challenges to face, all couples do, but they had tools now. They had understanding. They had each other, truly, in a way they hadn't for years. "Thank you for helping us find our way back to each other," Priya said. "But I didn't find their way back, they did. I just held the space while they remembered how to listen, how to speak, how to love each other well." That's what marriage counseling offers. Not magic, not instant fixes, but a path back to connection, walked one small step at a time until two people who felt miles apart discover they were always close enough to reach each other. All they needed was someone to show them how.